Hey cinephiles, over the coming weeks and months I'm going to be looking back at the films of 2020, starting here with my annual tradition of sharing my year in review on Letterboxd. Okay, I've only ever done this once before, but if you do it twice it's a tradition, right?
Tradition!
My 2019 year in review on Letterboxd video served as a primer of sorts for what this all is, and so check that out if you want the grand introduction. Basically, it's a glorified infographic of all the movies you watched that year, a nifty little feature that Letterboxd gives their paying members. And before anybody asks, no, this video is not sponsored by Letterboxd. It's sponsored by Wonder Woman 1984, the worst film of the year. Alright, let's do this. My 2020 year in review. First off, the main stats. I watched 373 films in 2020. I try to watch a film every single day, more or less succeeded there. Granted, I watched a lot of short films, which is why, if you factor in my hours, it comes out to be just over 1 hour per film. I logged 201 reviews. I made 21 lists, you'll see some of those in a sec. I liked 193 films, left 143 comments, and spent 419 hours watching films. Next up, highest rated films. I gave 3 2020 films a perfect 5-star rating: Lovers Rock, Dick Johnson is Dead, and American Utopia. And I gave a handful 4.5. You can toggle over to older films to see what else I gave 5 stars to last year. Most of these were rewatches of films I love. If there's films on here you haven't seen, I cannot recommend them enough. I hadn't seen Master and Commander since I saw it in theaters back in 2003, and wow, has it aged beautifully. What a film. It is a shame this never became the series it was intended to be. Then we have films by week. Admittedly, January and February were somewhat sporadic, but things were pretty even the rest of the year. Here are my milestones. The first film I watched in 2020 was No Country for Old Men. I intentionally wanted to start things on a high note. The last film I watched was Cops and Robbers. I watched You Lovely Lovers 3 times. If you haven't seen this demented gem, it's right here on YouTube and only a few minutes long. And there's a handful of other films I watched twice. Next is featured lists, which is a section you have the option to curate yourself. I like to include my ranked lists of 2020 films, documentaries, docu-series, short films, short documentaries, and comedy specials. I'm still in catch-up mode, so these lists will see some new additions over the next several weeks. Then we have genres, countries, and languages. Every year I look at this, and every year I tell myself I want my watching to be more diverse, and every year it's English language American dramas that always come out on top. Will 2021 be different? Probably not.
Tradition!
Personally, I find the breakdown interesting. The first pie chart differentiates the films I watched between 2020 released films and older films. Usually 35 to 50% of what I see is a new release, but this year was obviously different. A lot of the bigger films were delayed because of the pandemic, and so naturally a lot of us spent more time watching older films. As usual, most of what I saw was a first-time watch, over 82%, and I reviewed most of what I watched. A bit of a bell curve on my rating spread, which is probably how it should be. I prioritize films I think I will like, so I rarely spend time watching garbage. The only film I gave a half-star rating to in 2020 was Orgasmo, which I just couldn't believe how unfunny it was. Anyways, I watched 22 films on my watch list and added another 138. Okay, my most watched stars was hijacked by Chris Diamantopoulos and the gang because I marathoned through a bunch of the new Mickey Mouse shorts, which are pretty delightful. Highly recommend those for the young and the young at heart. They are all on YouTube and Disney+. Who else we got here? Yes, Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon. I rewatched all the Trip films in anticipation of the trip to Greece, one of my favorite series, which explains why Michael Winterbottom is one of my most watched directors. I finally watched Hiroshi Inagaki's Samurai Trilogy as I'm working my way through the mammoth-sized novel Musashi. My most watched director was Steve Cutts, an animator whose portfolio I just dove headfirst into. I have a list ranking his filmography. Do yourself a solid and check out Happiness. It's masterful. Again, it's right here on YouTube. And then there's crew and studios, more information than I know what to do with. Also, for these last 3 sections, you can toggle over to highest rated if you want to sort through that way. It shows your most liked review and most liked list. Highs and lows are always fun to see. Stop Making Sense has the highest average of all the films I watched, while Megan is Missing has the lowest. Very much deserved. I watched this movie so you don't have to. You can check out my video on it. Most popular is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I rewatched for the 3rd time this year. Then it slaps you you in the face with a massive wall of everything you watched, and this is only 204 of them. You can click here to see all 373. Here's the world map showing all the countries represented by what I watched in 2020. A whopping 214 American films, which means I watched 159 films from other countries, including 62 films from the UK, 20 films from France, and 21 films from Japan. Not too shabby. Still, I'd like to fill in more of this map in 2021. Now, I'm never gonna color this whole thing in a single year, which is why I love the inclusion of the all-time stats. 102 countries down, so I'm over halfway there. That map is much better to look at. Back to my 2020 page, the last thing is what I like to call the salt in my wound section. Highly rated films I haven't seen yet: Minari, Nomadland, and The Father. These three in particular are just mocking me because they haven't been officially released yet as of the making of this video. Like I said, salt in my wound.
And thank you so much for bringing up such a painful subject. While you're at it, why don't you give me a nice paper cut and pour lemon juice on it?
And there you have it, my 2020 year in review on Letterboxd. I will link to this in the description so you can check it out for yourself if you're interested. I will also link to the official Letterboxd 2020 year in review, which is always nicely done and well worth a scroll. Plenty of film recommendations to be found there. Minari, Nomadland, and Soul were the top 3 films of the year, while Tenet was the most popular. They also offer up some insane stats, like we as a community watched 210 million films. There's a lot more that I'll let you discover for yourselves. If you have any observations or questions, please let me know. If you have your own year in review, feel free to share it in the comments below, or just share your Letterboxd profile if you feel so inclined. As always, I'll see you down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If reverse psychology works on you, please don't. Subscribe to Cineflect for video essays, film lists, and more. And click that bell next to the subscribe button if you'd like to be notified anytime I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching. For Cineflect, I'm JS Lewis. Until next time, watch something good.
Tradition!